everyone! Welcome to episode number 38 of the Sew Not Scary series. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to sew perfectly straight lines using your mini sewing machine. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you guys have watched my previous videos, you will notice that I have mentioned on various occasions the fact that there is a problem with sewing straight seams with the mini sewing machine. And that problem is that if you look closely at the presser foot right there, it's wobbly. So let me just wobble it side to side. Do you see that? It wriggles. And there is no way of tightening it because right there, I've looked at it really up close and there's kind of like a riveting mechanism, I think. So it's permanently positioned in place. You cannot tighten it or loosen it or change it either. So we are stuck with this kind of wobbly presser foot. And it's important to know that it wobbles because what that means is that it's kind of like using a ruler to draw a straight line on a piece of paper. No matter how well you position your paper and how firmly you hold your paper in place, if the hand holding the ruler shakes, and if the ruler is shaky, your straight line is going to end up looking wonky. And it's the same principle at play here. No matter how well you cut your fabric, no matter how good a straight edge your fabric has, and no matter how well you try to align the edge of your fabric with, say, the edge of the presser foot, because the presser foot moves and wobbles, okay, you will never get that perfectly straight line. Now, I'm not an expert sewist, so even at the best of times on my bigger sewing machines like the LS14 that I showed you in this video, even at the best of times, my straight lines do end up wonky. Okay, having said that, on this particular sewing machine, my wonky lines end up looking even wonkier because of the wobbly presser foot. So I was scratching my head and looking at all sorts of literature and videos and tutorials on how to do this properly. How can I get a nice straight line or as straight as possible without doing anything too complicated or without buying really complicated or really expensive equipment. So obviously the first suggestion that anyone gives you is that you should use a magnetic seam guide, which is this little object I've got right here. And what the magnetic seam guide does is it's got a really strong magnet on the base of it. And see, there's metal right there at the base of your mini sewing machine's plate, okay? And this magnet can stick to that metal. So let's try it. Okay, it's stuck on. And now this little wall right here, okay, stops your fabric from shifting further to the right. So your lines end up being fairly straight, okay? Now, there is a problem with using this magnetic seam guide, however. And that problem is that this metal plate is only as small as this, okay? It doesn't extend further. And there's a dip in the sewing machine as well, which is weird. I don't know why there is a dip. So really, the only real use of this seam guide is to stick it or to budge it up right next to the mini sewing machine's presser foot. And what that then does is that it stops the presser foot from wobbling or wiggling all over the place, and you can get a nice straight seam. And if you remember this video where we were making the cover of our mini sewing machine, we did use the magnetic seam guide to get that nice straight stitch. However, it'll only give you about 1/8 of an inch of a seam guide. What do you then do if you want to make broader seams? Okay, what if you want to do some basic quilting like we did in this video of the mug rug tutorial? If you wanted to quilt straight lines in the middle of the fabric, what do you do then? How do you get nice straight lines? Now, it's not fun to draw straight lines on your fabric and then follow them with a needle and then try to wash those lines away. It's no fun at all. So after a lot of research and a lot of looking into it, I came up with this ninja trick, and I'm going to share that with you, okay? I have not seen this trick used anywhere. So I just discovered it by juggling a few different ideas, okay? So what I'll do is, here I've got a piece of old curtain fabric. And if you've seen this video, you'll see that this fabric is actually quite familiar. We use it to make some lovely Harry Potter themed drawstring bags with this. But today I'm going to show you how you can get nice straight lines of stitching, as straight as possible, using your mini sewing machine, using my secret ninja trick. Don't tell anyone else, okay? So what I'm going to do first is, I'm first going to start sewing using just the edge of the presser foot. So if you're unfamiliar with how really wobbly this foot is, you will get a fair idea of what you're going to achieve when you just use the presser foot's edge as a guide. And then I'll show you my secret ninja trick of getting perfectly straight stitches using your mini sewing machine, and hopefully that's going to solve a lot of your problems. So let's go ahead and get started. So here I am, I'm aligning the edge of my fabric with the edge of the presser foot, okay, as best as possible. And I'm going to lower the presser foot, lower the needle into my fabric, and you can see I'm using a black thread so we can see what our stitching looks like very clearly. And I'm going to switch on the light, and I'm going to start sewing, trying best as possible to keep the edge of the presser foot aligned with the edge of the fabric. Here we go. Okay, so let's take a look at our stitch line. And here, as you can see, because the presser foot is wobbly, okay, the line tends to kind of sway. It's not too bad, I must admit, okay? I didn't do a very bad job out of it, but I think if it was a very big project, a very long project, I would struggle to keep this level of accuracy, even though it's not very good, okay? Now, what would you do if you wanted to make a broader seam, okay? Say, for example, a 1-inch seam or even a 2-inch seam for maybe quilting purposes, okay? This sewing machine does not have any markings here. So what I did is I took a piece of painter's tape and I made some markings and measurements there, okay? And I stuck it on. So what I'm now going to try and do is sew a broader seam on this same piece of fabric and see how we do then. And again, you will see that because we had the edge of the metal plate guiding us, our line is actually not too bad. I've actually noticed that not only does the presser foot wobble, but the needle has like a fraction of a millimeter's wobble there as well. Okay, can you see it? Can you see the needle wobbling slightly as well? Okay, so you will see that from time to time where the needle wobbled a bit, it kind of went diagonally there and there, okay? So those are the chances you take with this sewing machine. Now I'm going to share with you a trick to sewing straight lines that I discovered when experimenting, okay? And this will help you in sewing no matter what part of the fabric you're sewing on. So even if you're sewing bang in the middle of the fabric or at the edge of the fabric, okay? This trick will help you sew straight lines, okay? And this is what you have to do. What you need is some painter's tape, okay? So it's a nice sticky cheap paper tape. And you need a length of thread in a color which is very unlike your project that you're sewing, okay? So if you look at this thread, it's like this green color which will stand out really well on our white fabric, okay? So we're gonna use this thread. And now let me show you what we're gonna do. So I'm going to unwind a length of string from my spool or thread, okay? And I'm going to position it roughly at a place or at a point behind where my sewing machine is supposed to be. So maybe here, okay? And then I'm going to take some tape and stick that thread down, okay? that thread is now stuck in place. You want to make sure that you've stuck it really well so that it doesn't come out easily, okay? You can use multiple pieces of tape if that's easier. So now with the remaining spool of thread, I'm going to kind of unravel some more thread so it's nice and long, okay? And then snip it off. And this long length of thread can actually easily reach up and over the sewing machine and onto my lap, okay? Okay, so our sewing machine is now connected. Now what you want to do is position the needle of your sewing machine in line with that thread that you just stuck down. So from here I can see at the back there, if you guys can see it too, I can see that thread that I stuck down, and I'm positioning my needle roughly in line with it. Don't worry if it's not accurate, we will adjust it later on as well, okay? And now we're going to start sewing. I've got a piece of white felt here and I plan to sew a perfectly straight stitch down the middle of it. So I'm going to position it underneath the presser foot and carefully lower the needle in the fabric. And then I'll begin by just doing 4 simple straight stitches to kind of lock the thread in place. Here we go. And now, do you see that taped down string we have? I'm going to lift the presser foot and stretch that string really taut and position it so that it makes a perfectly straight line straight down the middle of the felt fabric. And it is this thread now that I'm going to use as my guide to help me sew a perfectly straight line. So now I have to basically sew by keeping my needle just touching that thread and sewing straight along with that thread, okay? So here we go. I'm gonna go nice and slow, checking my stitches, making sure the needle is in line with that thread guide. And before long, I'm done sewing. Look how perfect that line is. It's absolutely perfect. Not a single wonky stitch. This time, because I went nice and slow, I actually adjusted for that slight wobble in the needle as well, okay? So look at that. Look how perfect that is. Not a single stitch is out of place. I managed to sew a perfectly straight stitch right in the middle of this fabric without aligning the edge of the fabric with anything. And anyway, the fabric is cut wonky, but look at the stitch line. It's so perfectly straight, okay? I hope you guys can see this. So next time, if you're struggling to sew a straight stitch with your mini sewing machine or any sewing machine really, you can use the same trick there as well by simply using some tape and some thread. Simply take a length of thread in a color which is very different from your own project so you can see it clearly, and tape it right behind the machine. So let me show you now. Right there behind the machine, I've taped it down, okay? And when you pull on it, it makes a nice straight line which flows nice and straight on top of your fabric, and it'll allow you to sew nice straight lines. I hope this was helpful, guys, and that it's given you more ideas to sew more projects with your mini sewing machine or any sewing machine that you have at home. If this was helpful, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I shall see you guys soon. Thank you for watching. Bye!